Good morning. My name is Doyle Dobbins, the worship associate for today, and on behalf of the First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware, I welcome you to our online worship service. We Unitarian Universalists frequently refer to ourselves as UUs, and we are a very diverse group of people. Our diversity means that we welcome you, regardless of what you believe, where you live, your racial identity, whom you love, or what you like to eat. We like to affirm our diversity, and so we invite you to participate in a wee bit of it this morning during this online service. Today is kickoff Sunday for our annual Guests at Your Table program. Therefore, during the stewardship moment, Beverly Baxter will be introducing the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, as we know, UUSC, and the Guest at Your Table program, which helps to support the worldwide social justice and human rights work of the Service Committee. Our guest minister and speaker today is Andrew Weber. He has been with us before, and we are pleased to welcome him back today. He is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, currently living in Newark, Delaware, with his wife and 2 small children. He is the travel program director with UU Partner Church Council, and believes in incorporating spirituality and faith identity in travel experiences. We are pleased to welcome Andrew as our guest speaker today. Our theme for today is deep listening to others and to ourselves. And now let us prepare our inner voices, our hearts, and our minds for worship.
In this familiar place, in your familiar place, listen to the sounds of breathing, creaking chairs, shuffling feet, clearing throats, and sighing all around. Know that each breath, movement, the glance meant for you or intercepted, holds a life within it. These are signs that we choose to be in this company, have things to say to each other, things not yet said, but in each other's presence, still trembling behind our heart's doors. These doors closed, but unlocked. Each silent thing waiting on the threshold between knowing and unknowing, between being hidden and being known. Find the silence among these people and listen to it all. Breathing, sighs, movement, holding back. Hear the tears that have not yet reached their eyes. Perhaps they are your own. Hear also the laughter building deep where joy abides despite everything. Listen, rejoice, and say amen. Come, let us worship together.
If you have a chalice at home, you're invited to light it at this point in time. And as we light the chalice here, please listen to the words of Eric A. Heller Wagner. Blessed is the fire that burns deep within the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit, touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life.
Find the stillness, oh, the stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, oh, the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
The Listening Walk. I like to take walks. I take walks with my father and our dog. Our dog is called Major. He's an old dog and he doesn't walk very fast. We go down the street and we don't talk. My father puts his hands in his pockets and he thinks. Major walks ahead and sniffs. I keep still and listen. I call this a listening walk. On a listening walk, I don't talk. I listen to all the different sounds. I hear many different sounds when I don't talk. First I hear Major's toenails on the sidewalk. Major has long toenails. When he walks, his toenails scratch the sidewalk. They go twick, 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 twick. I hear my father's shoes on the sidewalk. My father walks slowly, and his shoes go dup, 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 dup. I can't hear my shoes. I wear sneakers. I hear all sorts of sounds on a listening walk. I listen to sounds I never listened to before. I listen to lawnmowers. Lawnmowers are noisy. A lawnmower makes a steady zooming noise. It goes like this. Zoom. I like to listen to lawn sprinklers. Lawn sprinklers are very quiet. They make different sounds. Some sprinklers make a steady whispering sound, like this. Other sprinklers turn around and around. They go like this. On a listening walk, I hear cars in the street. The shiny new cars are very quiet. They make only a soft but old cars are very noisy. Old cars sound like this. On a listening walk, I hear all kinds of sounds. A bicycle bell ringing. Ting, ting, ting. A baby crying. A jet aeroplane flies over. Jets are very noisy when they're overhead. A jet goes meow, and a boy runs by dribbling his basketball. Boom, 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 boom. A lady hurries by us. She's wearing high heels. The lady's high heels go pick-pock, pick-pock, pick-pock. A bus is coming. The lady starts to run. Pick, 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 pick. The bus stops at the corner. And the lady gets on. The bus starts up again. Around the corner, men are digging up the street. They're using a jackhammer, and it makes a large banging sound. Dack, 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 dack. The jackhammer hurts my ears. I put my hands over my ears as we walk by. Dack, 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 dack. Sometimes my father and I take Major to the park. It's quiet there. The sounds in the park are not loud like the noises in the street. My father and I walk down a shady path. I don't talk. I listen. I listen to my father's shoes on the path. They make a soft sound. They go chuff, 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 chuff. I listen to the birds in the park. I listen to the pigeons and the ducks. The pigeons fly down to meet us. They want us to feed them. The pigeons puff up their feathers. They take tiny little steps. And they come towards us, nodding their heads. They say, "Brrr, brrr, brrr, brrr."
At the pond, the ducks are waiting. They want us to feed them too. The small ducks swim up close, turn their heads on one side and look up at us. The small ducks waggle their tails and quack. They say, "Quack, quack, 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 quack." The big ducks are not so brave. They stay back and swim round in circles. The big ducks look at us, but they don't come close. The big ducks say, "Quack, quack, quack." Sometimes I hear a woodpecker in the park. The woodpecker sounds like a little hammer. He goes, rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. And in the park I hear crickets in the grass. The crickets go, creet, creet, creet. I hear the wind in the leaves. It whispers, shh. I hear bees in the flowers. It's fun to go on a listening walk. You don't have to go far. You can walk around your block and listen. And you can walk around your garden and listen. You don't even have to take a walk to hear sounds. There are sounds everywhere all the time. All you have to do is keep still and listen to them.
Right now, there are sounds you can hear. When you finish this, sit and listen. How many different sounds can you hear right now? Try and count them.
If it is language that makes us human, one half of language is to listen. Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others. Listen even more to their silence. To pray is to listen to the revelations of nature, to the meaning of events. To listen to music is to listen also to silence, and to find the silence deepened and enriched. Let us share a time of silence together.
I now invite you to say the name or names of people for whom you are concerned and who need our care and support. May all whose names that were spoken and those unspoken find peace and healing today.
Our reading today comes from the shared scripture of Judaism and Christianity, from the Book of Kings, or 1 Kings, chapter 19. This book is mainly a historical account of the kingdoms of Judah and Israel. The passage I am sharing is about Elijah, shortly after he defends the Israelites and destroyed followers of another deity. Now, since this probably isn't a very familiar passage, I'll highlight some parts of it before and after I read it. So the main parts I'd like you to note as I'm reading is that Elijah is threatened, he tries to flee, and then he is supported and confronted by the Lord. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah has done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So may the gods do to me and more also if I do not make your life like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid. He got up and fled for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. He left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down underneath a solitary broom tree. He asked that he might die. "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my ancestors." And he lay down under the broom tree and fell asleep. Suddenly an angel came and touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked, and there at his head was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and he drank and he lay down again. The angel of the Lord came a second time, touched him, and said, "Get up and eat, otherwise your journey will be too much for you." He got up and ate and drank. Then he went in the strength of that food for 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. At that place he came to a cave and spent the night there. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." He said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, because the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of his cave. Now, I'm going to contextualize this passage a little bit more, because so often there's a backstory, there's some context which can help us to glean meaning, to understand what's happening. The Christian books 1 and 2 Kings are two parts of one book in the Jewish scripture named Book of Kings. This book is, not very surprisingly, written about kings. Namely, it gives an account of the rulers of Israel and Judah for about 400 years, from the end of King David's rule until the Babylonian exile. If you're taking notes, that's before the Common Era, 960 to 560. Now, what's important for the service today is not who's in charge, not what king is in charge, but how God was talking to those rulers, how their divine was talking to their rulers. A large part of the book of Kings is devoted to the work of prophets, namely Elijah and Elisha in the northern kingdom of Israel. And prophets are those people who have been specifically chosen or specifically called to say essentially what no one wants to hear. They've been called to point out faults, to admonish, and to generally be a big pain in the butt. We have prophets today, ministers, but not just ministers, political leaders, family members, friends maybe, those people who speak truth to power, who say what needs to be said. Okay, so Very briefly, that's the historical context. That's what we're talking about. In this passage, we meet Elijah in a not-so-good place. He's had it hard following his God's bidding, admonishing the government, and he was actually killing their false prophets. Now Jezebel, who was the queen of Israel at the time, wants to kill him as he has killed her prophets. Now, to his called vocation and the new threats upon him, Elijah responds, I think appropriately. He says, God, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm done. And he falls asleep by a tree. Now, it doesn't seem, however, that his God is done with him. So the angels come to the prophet Elijah, they wake him up, and they make him eat. Twice. So Elijah does as he is told. He wakes up, he eats, and finally he's told that the Lord will come by, will pass by him, and that he should get up actually now and wait for the Lord. So Elijah is standing near a cave, waiting for his God to come and speak to him. That's also part of what prophets do. They stand around and wait for the divine to speak. There he is waiting. Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Yahweh, Elohim, the shared divinity of Christianity and Judaism, is an all-powerful creature, creator, makes life from nothing, divides the earth into land and sea, creates the heavens, creates the earth, breathes life into all beings. And where is this awesome, divine power shown to manifest itself? The creator of all wasn't in the mountain-splitting wind. It wasn't in the earthquake or even in the fire. The inconceivable, almighty, infinite deity spoke in a sound of sheer silence. The sound of sheer silence that Elijah hears calling to him, that was his God calling to him. Other translations of this passage have a still small voice, a gentle whisper, a soft, gentle voice, a gentle blowing. I imagine the grass waving in the wind, snowfall, the breath of a loved one, a sleeping child, leaves falling, a slow brook, a sound which can be all but ignored, its subtlety. That's what I see as the point. The essence of what is good, the essence of what is holy, the essence of what is powerful in the world. The energy of creation, the spirit of everlasting love was in the sound of sheer silence, was in the gentle blowing. So that's my lesson for today. Very simply, that the divine is in the quiet, the small, the subtle. It's simple, but as usual, I preach to myself and I preach to all of you gathered virtually. And as usual, I'm not going to equate simplicity with ease. For talking about theology and living theology are two very different things. Talking about theology and living theology are very, very different things. It can be nice and simple to say, listen for God in the silence, hear the holy in a gentle voice. But how do we do that? How do we do that, especially in this culture in which we live? For what does our culture tell us? It tells us to pay attention to the loud, the exciting, the large, the in-your-face, the expensive, the obvious. We hear and see this all the time. There's constant movement, constant action, constant production. Even in our fairly small state of Delaware, and wherever you may happen to be this morning, it can be hard to get a place without hearing cars, without other people around. The pandemic has given us all more time apart, but not always more time for quietude, more time for reflection or listening. Yes, we can go for a listening walk in a park around town, maybe get a glimpse of rustling leaves, a babbling brook, but it will not last. And that is the exception now. That's the exception rather than the norm. We have to make a special trip to take that walk. No, not only the physical sounds of living our lives, but there is also a constant headlong rush into the next moment, the next task. We are told, and we tell ourselves, that productivity is equal to value, that we always must be doing or making something. When you meet someone, what is the first sort of normal question? What do you do for a living? Or what are you studying in school? This constant action, constant movement is how we define ourselves. It's how we define our lives. It is this noise also, this production, this movement noise, which keeps us from hearing the sound of silence. It keeps us from making connections. We can't connect to ourselves. We can't connect to those around us. We can't connect to the divine. Here's a Jewish prayer by Chaim Stern, which gets to the heart of the matter. Days pass, and years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. That's a hard one to hear, and frankly, it's sad. Days pass, and years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. The miracles are life in all its glory and wonder. The fact that we are alive at all. The love and care we have from friends, from a beloved community, from the natural world around us. These are the miracles we are missing when our minds are goal and action focused instead of life, and dare I say it, God focused. It is our work to refocus and become more attuned to those miracles that happen all the time. So go live in the woods, right? I say this, go live in the woods. I say this, be aware of the small miracles, but I want to acknowledge the realities. It isn't really helpful for me to say, leave your lives, get rid of your cars and your jobs, and retire into a cave. Because when you're in that cave by yourself, you can hear the voice of the divine. That's not helpful. Right? I mean, for some of us, that may sound like a really nice vacation. It may sound like a really nice break. But a way of life? And it's certainly not a very useful message this morning. Our current lives make it difficult, but not impossible, to hear the still small voice, to pay attention to the sound of silence, to see those miracles. Yes, there are still miracles in life, even with the busyness and tumult. The United Church of Christ, which is probably the closest Christian denomination to Unitarian Universalism, has a theological catchphrase: God is still speaking. Now, some of us may need to translate that term God into something we hold in our hearts. The nature, the divine, the holy, that which grounds and surrounds us, the unknown, that which brings life meaning and worth. It is still speaking. Now, for Unitarian Universalists, this phrase is easier to swallow than for some other faiths. Some faiths who have set scripture and dogma that does not change over time. If we were in the sanctuary together, I would have you try an experiment. And if you have a Unitarian Universalist hymnal at home, you can try this experiment at home. Even better if you have two, but what are the chances you have two hymnals? So if you go to the first hymn and go backwards one page, you don't have to zoom in on that, it's just writing. Go back one page, they list the 7 principles and 6 sources of Unitarian Universalism. And if you're online, if you're watching us virtually, which I know you are because there's no one here, you can do an online search, UU Principles and Sources, and it will come up. But the experiment is that depending on the age of your hymnal, depending on when this was published, it has a different number of sources. It'll have 5 instead of 6, depending on when this was published. And that's the thing, is that we as Unitarian Universalists try to be open to the living movement, open to revelation, open to spiritual insight, to things changing, to the divine. So if the divine is anthropomorphized, it's still speaking. It's still speaking. His feeling of goodwill is still speaking in the sound of silence, in the daily miracles of life. So how do we do it? How do we do it? How do we stop and listen as Elijah did? Sadly, I'm not sure that we will be alerted by an angel to stand at the mouth of our caves. No, we need to do this work on our own. But thankfully, it's not alone on our own. We're not truly by ourselves. We have communities, we have friends, we have examples, we have role models. And one of my personal role models is Sri Chinmoy. He's a late Indian spiritual leader who was, like me, very interested in exercise, especially running, and the intersection of mind and body. Sri Chinmoy is a guide for me in how he reaches out and how he experienced the holy. Right now, as I speak, there's a race going on in which Sri Chinmoy created. The race started on September 13th. Yeah, September. I know what month it is now. It started on September 13th. That's over a month ago. The race is 3,100 miles long. And it takes about 2 months to run, with competitors going through about 20 pairs of shoes. Now, this sounds absurd to me. It sounds absurd to me, and I like to run far distances. This race used to be held yearly in nearby New York City, but don't get your shoes out right now. Don't start tying your laces because of the pandemic, it's been moved to Australia, and also they've limited the number of participants. So now, I'm not sure if they're going to go back to the original course, but when it was in New York City, the course was, I think this is the craziest part. Yes, running for 2 months straight is pretty crazy, but even crazier is the course was 1 city block in New York City, a little over half a mile. So that means you're doing 5,649 laps, just around in a small circle, over and over for 2 months. This is incomprehensible to me, to most people. It's called the Self-Transcendent 3,100. Its purpose is to challenge runners to transcend their own previous capacity, to gain spiritual insights, and overcome the entire world's preconceived notions of possibility. Wow. I see the runner's purpose as getting to a place where they can hear that sound of silence. They are looking to break down the barriers between self and divine, to listen to the gentle whispering. And does it work? I'm sure it does. Just as throwing away all your possessions, leaving your responsibilities and moving to the woods would have a similar change on your priorities. You can run for days on end. You can cease all you do and listen for the holy, but those are paths of somewhat extreme. Let us instead look to sort of more realistic paths of moderation. The point here is to be open to the voice of the holy, to be open to seeing or hearing the divine in the midst of all the chaos, all the tumult of life. We aren't going to have an angel knock on our door and prepare us. We aren't going to run in a circle for 2 months. We aren't going to become a hermit. But we are going to continue to live our lives. And so the question remains, then how do we continue to live our lives and hear that sound of deep silence? If we say that the divine is an ever-present source of love and light, well, ever-present means everywhere. It's up to us to recognize and feel that presence. Just as with much of practical theology, it takes patience, it takes practice. So I don't have a special secret, I'm sorry. I don't have a secret that once shared, you will make responding to emails and taking out the garbage deep, prayerful exercises. These are extreme examples, but I'm looking to continue my life and shift my focus. There's a Jack Kornfield book whose just the title hits exactly on this. The title of his book is After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. After the ecstasy, the laundry. How do we continue to live our lives and still be connected to ourselves, to each other, to the world, to the holy? How do we hear that sound of silence? We need to find the divine presence even when we are doing the mundane, even when we are not fully content or fully centered. The practice, however, starts with being content and centered, and the practice may be different for all of us. What puts you in touch with yourself? What puts you in touch with something larger than yourself? What helps you connect to others? What helps you connect to the divine? It may be music, virtually attending church here, singing, listening to birds in the woods, going for a walk, going for a run, praying, meditating. And also, the flip side. What helps you disconnect from yourself or from others? What makes you feel isolated or alone? These are the questions we all must wrestle with and then look to respond to in our lives. I know that if I start looking at social media a lot, if I start listening to books on MP3 or watching movies, I can get into a very insular and isolated frame of mind. I'm not aware of myself. I'm not aware of my surroundings. I'm not aware of those around me. Conversely, I also know that when running, I feel more centered. I feel more alive. And I know that if I enter into communities, even virtual communities like this, or over a Zoom drink with a friend, I feel more connected to myself, to someone else, to something larger than myself. You may be similar. You may be opposite. It doesn't matter if we are the same. What matters is that we continue learning about ourselves and how we can connect to ourselves, how we can connect to each other, and how we can connect to the holy. And then we build on those times when we feel connected. We build on the times we hear that still small voice inside, and we push ourselves to feel that connection, to feel that presence more often. One way we can all practice right now is to take moments in our lives and really pay attention, like the listening walk, like the story we had this morning. Look for the miracles that usually go unnoticed. Listen to what is happening in the world. Try to hear the divine in the silence. And in the noises you hear, acknowledge the holy all around. It is ironic that I've been talking so much about the sound of silence. Let us therefore end our reflection as I ended the story with a simple guided meditation in silence. I encourage everyone to find a relaxing space, relaxing position to sit. If you are more comfortable not sitting, of course, it is up to you. You may stand, you may find a spot on the floor. In the words of Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, it's best to feel completely at ease. Every muscle in your body should be relaxed, including the muscles in your face. The best way to relax the muscles in your face is to smile gently as you breathe. You should keep your spinal column quite straight, but the body should not be rigid. This position will relax you, and you can enjoy the feeling of ease. Do not make a great effort. Do not struggle. Do not fight. Let go of everything as you sit. And breathe in, out. If you are comfortable doing so, close your eyes. You may also want to keep them open with a soft gaze. And breathe. In, out. Once you settle in, notice your body. How does it feel? Let your body begin to relax by releasing any tension as you are breathing. Take slow, deep breaths, and as you exhale, let the tension go. Are there areas where your body feels tense? Focus your attention on this area as you take another breath in. Feel this area relaxing as you breathe out. Allow your breathing to gradually slow down. Breathe in, and breathe out. As you breathe, really take note of the room around you, the people around you. What is happening nearby? What is happening just outside? What smells do you notice? What sounds do you hear? As you continue paying attention, think about what we often miss or ignore. Do you notice a miracle? Where is that still, small voice? Listen and feel for it. Continue breathing and noticing. Remember what you noticed, what you found difficult, what you heard. Open your eyes, but stay in a relaxed position, taking a moment to reawaken completely. Continue to breathe smoothly and rhythmically. This is our practice, not to leave our lives and our commitments, but to engage fully with our lives and still be open for the still small voice. Our calling is to clean the house and be amazed by the miracle of life, to write emails and see the divine in every personal connection, to take every moment of our lives and see where the divine is in each moment. The days pass and the years go by. Take the time to walk among the miracles and be aware. Amen.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. I still move deep inside. I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, quenching my tears through all the years, singing.
Our stewardship reflection today is not about today's offering, which will be for the work of this church. Rather, it is about what we are doing for the next 5 weeks, our Guest at Your Table program. In a normal year, we would be talking about boxes. As those of you who have been members of First U for a while know, this is the time each year when we begin our Guest at Your Table program. The guest that you usually pick up and take home is a box that you put on your table and feed with money, then bring back in November. The box is from the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. UUSC is our human rights organization based upon our UU principles, working for social justice around the world. We UUs have a long history of working for human rights. The work of the Service Committee began when Unitarian minister Waitstill Sharp and his wife Martha left their church and their 2 young children in Wellesley, Massachusetts in 1939 to go to Prague, Czechoslovakia, to help rescue intellectuals, artists, Jews, and others targeted by the Nazis. The Sharps had to flee Prague to avoid arrest, and upon their return to the United States, they and other Unitarians officially formed the Unitarian Service Committee in 1940. This year, we are celebrating the Service Committee's 80th anniversary. The Service Committee continued throughout the war to rescue those targeted by the Nazis, including children whom at-risk parents entrusted to Martha to bring to the U.S. for their safety. Before most Americans were aware of what was happening in Europe, the Service Committee was there, making a difference. Our history is replete with examples of the Service Committee going where others won't, of doing what others will not, of addressing the needs of the marginalized, of taking on what I call the sandpaper issues, those that are too rough for other organizations. Since our beginnings during World War II, the Service Committee has been responding around the world to difficult human rights issues. We were in Central and South America during the turmoil of the 70s and the 80s, before the U.S. acknowledged its military involvement. We were in Ethiopia before the world knew there was a famine. UUSC was in Eritrea before the world paid attention to the attacks from Ethiopia. We were empowering untouchable women in India before the world took notice. We were partnering in Rwanda before the world responded to the genocide. We were in Darfur long before the celebrities began showing up. We were in Burkina Faso before the world cared about the poor women enslaved to prostitution there. We were in Kenya as a disputed election turned violent. Our partners were active in nonviolent education efforts in Egypt as the Arab Spring began. We worked with those left behind by the big NGOs after the earthquake in Haiti, then again following Hurricane Maria. We were in Turkey with a partner that is helping Syrian refugees deal with trauma. And we are now in Hungary, where Viktor Orban has vilified refugees. We're in Myanmar, where the Rohingya have faced genocide. We're working with indigenous communities under threat of climate-forced displacement in the Solomon Islands, Kiribati, Alaska, and the Louisiana bayous. We're in Mexico and Arizona, supporting refugees from the violence in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Our work on migrant justice includes the right to safety in Central America, the right to safety on the migrant trail, and human rights in the U.S. immigration system. As many of you know, Doyle and I have visited with partners in Myanmar, Nicaragua, Hungary, Croatia, and Serbia, and have seen firsthand how the partnerships you make possible are changing lives. There are a lot of organizations to which we all contribute, but the Service Committee is unique. It is our UU, human rights organization, based upon our UU principles, respecting the inherent worth and dignity of every person and the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. You, along with UUs across the country, make the work of the Service Committee possible. As we began this year's Guest at Your Table program, we can't be together, and you can't pick up a box. But watch for weekly articles in the e-newsletter and 2 additional emails, which will tell you more about the work of the Service Committee and ways you can contribute without a box. And please, plan to join us on November 22nd when we conclude this year's Guest at Your Table program with that Sunday's service. Now, let us prepare for our time of giving today for the work of this church. There are 3 ways to give to First Unitarian Church. You can send a check to the church, you can use your credit card on the church website, or you can make your donation using the Give Plus app. For more information, see the slide on your screen. Let us prepare now for our time of giving today for the work of this church. Please join me in repeating our words of stewardship commitment. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings.
My life goes on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, the far off hymn that hails a new creation.
No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love prevails in heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing?
While though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth.
If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Amen and blessed be.
As we extinguish our chalice flame, consider it an invitation to keep the flame of our inner voices burning and guiding us. May we leave this service with determination to listen to our inner voices and to those around us, and to do all that we can to make a difference within our community and within our world. So be it.
On the day we are together again, on the day we are together again, I will pull you in close like a hoop with no end. On the day we are together again, we will share the same table again. So
Amen.